And thank you so much for having me. Very honored to be here. So I'm Ellen. I head the Center for Digital Green Tech at the Scheer Institute. We're a digitalization and a research institute. And a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Germany, from the northern part in Lower Saxony. That's where I'm developing also together with my team, the center. And I have studied in Karlsruhe at the KIT Business and Engineering, and then was 12 years abroad. Actually, I just came back a year ago. I was a carbon credits auditor in Middle East, and then went to Singapore, where I was the last 11 years, had my own company there, a startup, and then developed a startup incubator at a local university. And I'm still teaching there social entrepreneurship and corporate venture building. So funnily, actually, at that time already, I had 3 startups. So imagine 20-plus-year-old student founders, and they came out with insect farming ideas, and actually all of them are quite profitable by now. So I'm very proud of them, and I hope that we can bring something of this innovation also to Germany and to Europe. So maybe I'll start with a show of hands. Who actually would love to try, or maybe smell first? It's not yet approved for eating, but your cats and dogs might want to have a try. Who wants to have a smell? Anybody interested? Please raise your hands. My colleague will come around, and you're more than happy to have a smell. I was told, I don't have pets, but I was told it smells like dog food or cat food. This is actually a larvae. It's from the black soldier fly. It's an insect. And this is the larvae that can be now fed to animals, also in Europe. Great. Maybe another question for me today. Is anybody here already in insect farming or somehow involved with insect farming products? Okay, not yet. So maybe that will change. But is anybody open to eat insect proteins? Okay. So if you know there's 1 billion people say 1 to 2 billion people in the world who already eat insects directly, not so much in Europe yet, but we do have some insects already in our food. If you know Kinder Schokobons, there is some insect inside. And we believe this industry is growing, and there's lots of room for digitalization, for new technologies. So I'll share a little bit about that today. First of all, we have created a small video, a very short video for you. So please sit back and enjoy. So we actually think that the insect economy is here. And I want to share my personal experience with insects with you, because it started really in Singapore, because one of the startups I knew there, I interviewed him for my course so that my students understand what he's doing, and he got the Social Entrepreneurship Award over there. And then it's really when I saw the opportunity and how large that already is growing in Asia and also in US. Then a few weeks ago, I organized a trip to Singapore, also brought our director of our institute with me, and we visited that insect farm. And then imagine, in Singapore you have 80% humidity, 30 degrees, these insects eat food waste, and when you come into that factory, there's a certain smell that surrounds you, right? So that was already quite hard on my boss's stomach. So he told me afterwards he actually almost puked. But I thought it was still okay. Then my next experience was just, I think 2 weeks ago with my colleague Oz here. We went to Munich, where another insect farm is nearby. And the CEO actually brought us there. It's a 1-hour drive. And of course, he's a passionate founder. So when you sit in his car, and I was sitting in the back seat, you can already smell the insects, right? And it has a similar smell than what you just realized. And then I was sitting behind. I'm sometimes getting a bit car sick. Okay, then I have this smell on top of it. And then I heard a buzzing sound. And I looked back in the window, and there was a black soldier fly. They are roughly that large, 2 centimeters, and quite big. So I thought, okay, interesting. I'm going to share my ride now with the black soldier fly. And then arriving there, you come into the factory, and there's sometimes some larvae crawling on the floor, so you have to see that you don't step on it. You can feel also the food waste that they're eating, because it has a certain smell, because they eat a Weizenkleie, which is a byproduct of the wheat product. And they also have to have these containers where they have 80% humidity and 30 degrees temperature. So definitely an interesting experience. It's not something for light stomachs. And the best one is when you go into the flying zone. I called it the fly terror, almost, a bit like Lord of the Flies, if you have read that book. It felt like it, because, where they breed the eggs, they can actually, fly around. So they come into your hair, they sit on your clothes. They are not dangerous. They are totally harmless. But it is an experience that, it's for people who kind of enjoy that environment. So I was very amazed about my colleague who was touching the larvae, and they were crawling around, because that's something quite special. But the opportunity is amazing. So why do we think that we should look into insect tech and also green tech for the larger idea? And I want to shortly show you the 6 waves of innovation. So it's a theory by Kondratiev, and later also Josef Schumpeter has developed it. And it mainly says that we have gone through different eras of innovation. And there's always a basic technology that helps us build new businesses, helps us come up with disruptive technology, disruptive ideas that changes, in a way, society, also economy, but then also helps us to start new businesses, right? And if you look at the past waves, you always have a quite major innovation that changed our society tremendously, and how we do work, how we travel, how we interact with each other. And now, many people agree that this wave where we are in, it's the sustainability wave. Some people call it sustainability, some people call it clean tech, we call it green tech. So there will be many, I think, very interesting innovations coming out. And the basic technology that a lot of people agree on that we will come out with is AI, right? And you already see lots of disruptive businesses using AI. So we at the Center for Digital Green Tech, we want to combine these 2 ideas, and we are looking at what is actually the possibility, where's the impact to use AI for green tech technology. And then we have to look at impact, right? And impact is something that I think we are still learning how to measure it. So for us, we are measuring it into the reduction of carbon emissions, because if we actually want to become carbon neutral by 2040, worldwide, we would have to save 1.8 billion tons of CO2 per year. So Germany committed, due to the Paris Agreement, that we will roughly have to save 45 million tons of CO2 per year. And then we were thinking, because we started our center and we want to call us only green tech if we're really doing green tech, we decided that our big, hairy, audacious goal, which is obviously audacious, it's stemming also from the startup thinking, should be that we reach 10% of that. So we want to achieve 4.5 million tons of CO2 reduction per year, which means 80 million tons of CO2 by 2040. And that's how we assess our research, our projects, our ideas that we come up with. Actually, how much is the impact? Is that something worth putting our resources in? And that's why we want to share a bit about the insect economy with you today. Because as we already heard, our world population will increase to 9.7 billion by 2050. So that also means that our food waste will grow to 1.5 billion tons by 2050. And that has already today an impact of 3 billion tons of CO2 that we are emitting due to food waste incineration and landfills. So as you see in the picture also, 1/3 of all the food that we are producing is not ending up getting used, it's lost or wasted. And agriculture production has quite a large stake in that. And then we look deeper into, okay, what happens with agricultural products? In the EU, cereal crop production actually accounts 62% is used for animal feed. And if we look at the meat production in itself, meat production accounts for 3.8 billion tons of CO2 globally. So, which means then that cereal production as animal feed accounts for 800 million tons of CO2. This is annually. So putting these two things together, we have estimated that with insect farming, actually by 2050, we could reduce 1.8 billion tons of CO2. So if we would only achieve 4% of that, we would reach our goals that we have set. That's why we felt this is an interesting economy, it's an interesting idea that we have to look into to see how we can help that industry to grow. And these are the three main areas where we can have an impact. First, it's because these insects eat food waste, we actually can reduce 30% of the emissions if we were to use the food waste for insects. Another lever is the animal feed replacement. If we were to use insects instead of soy that is mostly produced also in Brazilian rainforests, we were to reduce 70% of the emissions. And lastly, that's kind of a no-brainer, is if we were to replace insect protein with meat, we can reduce 90% emissions compared to beef or 60% compared to pork. And I'm not even talking about water or land use. We would need actually only 80% less water for 1 kilogram of insect protein compared to that from beef. So there is a large impact that we have. And the question is, I think especially also for Germany, what if we do nothing, right? We have seen in a lot of innovations that they have somehow passed us, but here we have quite an issue because 35,000 German farms have gone extinct in the last 10 years. And that means we are reducing in numbers, but farms are actually growing in size. So the agricultural land used per farm is growing, but the numbers are becoming smaller. And recently we met with a politician in our area in Lower Saxony. He told us that 10% of these previously usually pig farms, they are now vacant. So that means, and you see a picture here, this is actually a farm for sale, just as an example. They all have rooftops where potentially we could put solar panels on. They have space, and in terms of regulation also, it's easier to apply for a permit there to create an insect farm because it has already been used for agricultural purposes, so that would also help us. And in lots of countries, insect farming has already grown tremendously. It is currently estimated to be a roughly $1 billion market by 2027. We have also seen some studies showing that it could even become a $10 billion market. But what is happening is that many farms are now expanding. We have startups also in Germany getting funded. And in France, we have the largest insect farm as of now. And interestingly, only in 2021, which is 2 years ago, the EU passed a law that now insects can be fed to these animals, which is fish, pork, or pigs, and chicken. They also can be used as pet food and in the zoo for the zoo animals. So that law only changed 2 years ago. In Asia and US, it wasn't regulated, so we have seen a larger market growing there for some time, so we're a bit behind. But the good thing is that it changed, and we can now start also with insect farming in Europe. So obviously not everything is great in this economy, so I just want to share with you what are currently the challenges the industry is facing, and then later also share with you the projects that we are doing in the technology space. So in the first place, we have to see that currently insect proteins is still more expensive than, for example, soy. So roughly soy as animal feed is at 1,500 to 2,000 euro per ton, and insect protein is at somewhere between 2,500 to 3,000 euro per ton. So it is still more expensive. Has also something to do with just getting started. Doesn't have so much economy of scale yet, and it's quite manual, which I think will improve in the future, but it's really also a consumer choice. Another challenge we have in the EU is that currently the organic food that we have in supermarkets, also in households, cannot yet be fed to insects. It has something to do with the BSE scandal, the mad cow disease, because it is even the organic food in a supermarket is not meat, but it could have been possibly contaminated with meat. Therefore, it is declared, I'm not a law as specialist, but what we learned so far from interviews is it has been declared as a category 3, which cannot be fed to animals. And that law is different in US. In US, if you have organic food from the supermarket that hasn't been in the category of meat, you can use it. It's a small law, I think, that needs to, or it's a small detail, but if we change that, we have a much larger impact in using or reusing and upcycling that food waste that we already have. And yeah, I'm excited actually about these projects because we do have some larger supermarket chains also in Germany that are interested to go into research with us, and then we hope that we can also advise on how to change the law here. A third one is that, as you know, we still feel it's a bit disgusting, and myself as well. The smell is really not something that I love. So we have this trend that we don't want to have insects in food, right? And obviously we all agree if we were all vegetarians, it would be much better for our climate. So there is a trend that there are signs that, there's no insect in food. So if the alternative is actually that there is animal products in it, from a CO2 or from a carbon perspective, it would be much worse. But we have to see how that trend develops. And then on the bottom line, you see the issues with the technology space. So one is that we have so much room for optimization in insect farming, because if you think about how the meat production started 100 years ago, and maybe your grandma was still having a pig under their roof, right? And they did the whole process of letting it grow, feeding it, and eventually slaughtering it and eating it. So the same, now the meat industry has totally changed. We have companies that just are into production of the small pigs. We have other companies, they're in the production of feeding them, and we have others who process them further and others who sell it. So if you think about the insect market, it is currently where the meat industry was 100 years ago, but a lot of people say that in the next 5 years, it's going to change in a similar way. And we have seen some companies already who outsource, for example, insect breeding, so the egg laying process. They outsource that and they sell the young larvae to farmers. So they don't have to care about the egg laying process and making small larvae. They just have to use their agricultural waste, feed it to the young larvae, and make it eventually food for their animals. So it is starting to get more distributed, but it's really at the early stage. So that's also another reason why it's still more costly, is because the egg breeding is complicated, it's quite tedious, and it is at 35% of total costs. So if that is outsourced, actually some farmers are able to produce 1 ton of insect protein for only €500, which is then much more beneficial for them for their own consumption. And lastly, what we think will also develop in the next years is some kind of standards for quality control. Currently, there's really a lack of data. That's why it's hard also to look into that and to understand more about the different types of insect proteins. So our vision is to create a circular approach. So we are looking at food waste. What type of food waste can we actually take out so that it doesn't get incinerated, it doesn't go to the landfill, but it's actually reused as feed. Then, secondly, we have to look into the preparation of the feed, because these insects, somehow they don't like very liquid stuff, cannot be too liquid, cannot be sour, and they have certain preferences. And we, I think, can find out also with technology how to create a perfect match so that the insects are happily eating and growing. And thirdly, and that's what I show you in a bit, is we are looking deeper into insect production, because there is a huge opportunity here for efficiency, for technology, and also for helping bringing the price down. And lastly, actually, if you have insects going through that food waste, what you get at the end is large larvae that you can feed to the animals, but also you get their poop. And the poop actually is called frass. That is a really, really valuable fertilizer. So you can bring that back into vertical farms or other type of plants and grow them in a better way. So just to give you an idea of the cycle of a black soldier fly, is that they, as I mentioned, they are like 1 to 2 centimeters large, and they produce 320 to 620 eggs in 4 days. Then, if you think about the size, it's so tiny. So when I was at these insect farms, you can hardly recognize it with your own eye, because 1 gram of eggs is 30,000 to 50,000 larvae. It's quite tremendous. Then they become small young larvae, which is also called neonates or hatchlings. And then these hatchlings, they eat on the food waste. They are then brought into another process where some companies even count them with their mere eye, like they count 100 larvae to then extrapolate it to understand how many larvae is inside. And then they grow. You have to understand also then how much food waste they want. Then they grow in these trays, and some percentage, usually 10%, you use then for reproduction. So they become pupils, and then you have these flying zones where they lay the eggs, and new larvae comes in. And here's some pictures from a recent trip. So you can actually get an idea. So in these containers, you have these 30 degrees and 80% humidity. And in these trays, you have the food waste. Then if you look at the middle upper picture, you have a small box, a white box, and inside is young larvae. And that young larvae can be distributed over the whole space, 4 into 13 trays. Eventually they grow, they become food, and then there's a machine also that separates the larvae from the fertilizer. And the lower right picture, that shows you where the eggs are in. So the eggs are on cardboards, and once they hatch, they fall down into the tray of food waste, and then they eat their way through. And that's currently where the research is at. We are actually able to do insect detection. So there is some AI algorithm that can help us understand which insect is male or female, because if you think about, if you have the right ratio of male and females, they will produce more eggs. And so we are currently developing technology where we can see, for example, gender, but also mating behavior, and understand then how to improve that process. And eventually, we want to come up with a tool that uses the metadata of insect species, but also has vision recognition and feed type, to then match it with the environmental data, which is temperature, light, humidity, also airflow, to create an AI-enabled analysis to help us see what's the optimum larvae should look like, right? What's the quantity, the gender, health, development, and threats. So threats, interestingly, if you have houseflies, they also love food waste, but they will then eat a certain amount of the food waste. So that's why they need to know how much larvae is inside, so that the larvae gets enough food waste and will not die, because there are other insects eating on it. There are many other reasons why the amount of larvae is important to know. It can actually reduce costs. We heard 50% of the breeding costs can be reduced if we have such type of technology. Even the yield can increase by 10%. So there are lots of benefits that help us grow this economy and also develop these technologies. So here you see what happens if you have eggs in these cardboards. There's thousands of eggs inside, and then once they hatch, they fall actually down in that tray. So currently we're developing technology that allows us to count them, because when we speak to the industry, actually nobody is able to do it yet, because they are so tiny, small, but it would tremendously help them for downstream optimization. And I'm coming to the end of the presentation, so just to summarize the benefits that we believe is in insect tech, and I think why we should look deeper into it, is that we will be able to have a digital insect recognition that's not only important for black soldier flies. We have actually heard also from beekeepers that they would love to know more about the behavior of their bees, because there are certain possibilities to have an understanding about biodiversity. You have an understanding about the health status of the bees. You can also estimate if the queen is inside, or if the bees have separated and there's a new queen. So we believe there's a lot of benefits if we are able to have better technology in insect recognition. Then secondly, we could obviously do more with food waste or agricultural waste upcycling, if we are able to first use also supermarket food waste and other types of food waste in the EU, but even in Asia and in US, it is important that we understand what type of food waste should go into insect farming, and to optimize that. Finally, we think that the cost can come down if we improve on these processes, and we need to match the right amount of food waste per insect. So just to share two statements of some partners we are working with, because we are digitalization and research institute, what we always see is that they appreciate that we can improve their operations, obviously, and also that we can help them manage their processes, so that they can become better insect farmers. So that's it for this section. Thank you so much for being here. We have two things if you want to come to our stall. It's at R08. We can give you some trial. You can bring it home, maybe for your cats or dogs. And we also have a science magazine. It's on impact, and you are more than happy to take one with you. So we are opening now for questions, and more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ellen. Come on, no one has any questions about that. Okay, so I will go. You mentioned something about there being a lot of inefficiencies in insect production. When do you foresee majority of those challenges taken away? And
yeah. Good question. So we are now working with a couple of insect farms on developing this technology. They're all super interested. They are at the early stages, so usually they are seed stage or Series A. So there is limited funding here. So I think if we are able to, make this topic also more known and how much impact it creates, and if some impact investors are jumping on the bandwagon, we will definitely see a faster change. But looking at the industry and how it has developed in very, very few years, there are lots of people that say that in 5 years, it's going to boom and it's going to get much more efficient. We also have a very large farm in Germany, also in the northern part, that are now, they just got, I think, quite a substantial amount of funding, and they're expanding. So there's a lot of opportunity.
Okay. Any questions from the audience?
I'm just curious, how are the larvae killed? By freezing them, or how does it work?
Actually, I have my colleague Oz here.
Yeah, they are freeze most of the time. So for them, this is the easiest process. And
okay, so that's so they don't feel any pain or whatever. Yeah. Second question: you mentioned that the Kinder Schokobon has already insects in it. So do you have to label it in Germany, or how does it work?
Yeah, you have to label it. It's one of the E405 or something. I forgot the number. But if you dig deeper into it, it has something to do with insects.
Okay.
And sometimes also in pet food, it's still there. So, but it's labeled, so you see it.
Or protein bars for sportsmen. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
So if you have your dog or your cat, you can feed it to them. That's all right. Yeah. I think some questions are there. Yeah.
Hey, I was just curious about one detail. You were talking about using AI to identify like male-female ratios, but it seems to me if you have like a ton of flies and you just take 10%, are you not getting roughly 50-50 every time? Like how much do we really need AI for this kind of differentiation?
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, you can put a ton, but in this, when you have the breeding process, it's good that you have small boxes. And it could be that you have like 70-30 in one box and 30 and 70 in the other box. So it would be really great to see, especially in one box, how much are there inside. And also to make a quality test there, it would be great if, for example, the health of one insect isn't good. So this is also a big issue in this field. So it would be great to just have an AI tool there, like in real time. Yeah.
Ellen, you mentioned a few challenges with the EU market. Have you looked at other continents, perhaps, that have lighter regulations?
Yeah, and actually, from a German perspective, that a bit makes me sad, because we recently spoke also to a large company in Germany, and they said they will go to US because it makes so much more sense to build up a large insect farm there. And we see also the French company now moving to US. And coming from the startup scene, and also just having moved from Asia to Germany, I mean, yes, we have, I think, always trouble with regulation. Obviously, it's also right to have good regulation, I think. And there's lots of things that the world can learn from Europe as well. But there is a trend that companies are moving out. And then we have to think, okay, what can we do in Europe, right? As actually, what I thought is interesting that abroad, when I was abroad, still people look at Germany and Europe as one of the places where now possibly the innovation, the deep tech innovation can come from, because it's now going into deep tech AI, and we have lots of great engineers here. And it also is going into sustainability. And combining these, a lot of people say that Europe actually now has a chance. Because if you think about the past, where's the German PC or the German laptop or the German cloud? Like somehow we haven't managed that, right? And that's why also it's, for me, interesting to come back to Europe and to look into what we can do here, because I do believe that we actually have a chance to change something for the better, to create an impact, come up with deep technology and make it market ready. But it pains me to see that still there are lots of German companies who go abroad for economical reasons, which I can totally understand. If I were the entrepreneur, it's a hard decision to make, right? So we are looking now into, and that's why we are also speaking to politicians and different people who possibly can change something, because it's really just a small thing that needs to change in the law, but it would allow us to use that food waste and actually upcycle it, for example, in insect farming. And that's what we're trying to do. I don't know how long it will take. I'm just a year back, so I'm already sometimes frustrated with German speed, but I do hope that we're working hard, to make that change happen.
How do you think we can change the perception about insect farming? I mean, I barely want to go near that. Lots of people cringed when they were smelling it.
Yeah.
So how can we change that?
I would always say it would be perfect if we are all vegetarians, right? I don't have, I'm not going to say we all have to do or we have to eat insects, right? But there are some studies that show that roughly 30% are still going to eat meat. And then if you look at our natural resources, it's just not going to work out. The math is not going to work out. And we already have such a problem with climate change. So I really think it's a great alternative for one, the feed for the animals, but also to really replace the meat in itself. And that's where I hope that the market is right now. Because if I think we eat meat and it has been fed by insects, we don't really care, right? If we're meat eaters anyways. But eating insects directly, yes, in this part of the world, I think it's still a challenge. But I was living in Asia for quite some time, and I think it was in Africa as well. So it's common, right? 1 billion people already eat insects. So I think it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, and I think most of the time when people tried insects the first time, they said, "Oh, they taste good," or like chips or something like that. And so it's when you do it once, I think after that it's possible that you eat more. And I think this is the step, if you can manage this. And you can start with products, for example, where the animals were fed with insects. And then I think this is the first step, when people understand, okay, the meat that I eat now is fed by insects. This is kind of weird, but it's okay for me because it's the same that I ate before. And then it's the first step, and then you try maybe the insect in the second. And if you do it this time, then you have the third step, and a lot of people eat insects then. So I think this is kind of a process and a way to get there.
How far away are you from that right now?
I eat them already. So
really?
Yeah, a lot of people are eating it, and in the restaurants also. I mean, there are a lot of restaurants, and there are a lot of companies, even in Germany, who are creating pasta out of insects. I mean, this is like, it's a new field, but it's not that I think 20% of the people in Germany eat insects already. So
wow,
that's a lot.
Are any of you here?
No, maybe not here 20%, but.
Any other questions from the audience?
No.
Well, thank you very much, Ellen.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, Eris.